You're listening to the Valley Current.
Jack?
Hey, Rafael, you sound good.
You sound good too. I turned off my video. Do you want me to? I didn't prepare anything.
No, turn it on. Turn on your video. It's okay. We'll just keep the video to one side to remember that we're still looking young. You're looking young.
You're looking good.
Look at you. You've got your study there with thousands of books in the background. I'm very impressed.
Oh, yes. I've read them all.
No, seriously.
I wrote many of them.
No, seriously. You have the most excellent treatise on fiduciary duty law.
Thank you.
In fact, I'm probably one of the few owners of two of them. Two of them, because I've got one at home and one here at the office.
You can compare the copies to make sure they're accurate. Did I send you the textbook?
No, I don't think I've got the textbook.
I'll send you a gift copy. I wrote a textbook, which I'm very proud of, but which, for some reason, law professors have they're very snooty about these things.
No, I think you actually do the law that matters in business and in society.
I feel that way. I've always felt that way.
No, it's true. And I knew your brother years ago. This is a small story. I don't know if I've told you this. I was clerking at a Beverly Hills law firm, Irvin, Cohen, and Jessup. I think they're still around. This is the 1970s.
We had interaction with them.
And your brother, and I think you and the team were pursuing this guy that ran a church, and I don't remember.
Oh, yes. In Pasadena. I remember the case that Irvin, Cohen, and Jessup was defending him.
You've got a great memory, because I remember at the time thinking, your brother had no notes. He got up there to make the argument, and everyone on the Irvin, Cohen, and Jessup side said, he's got no notes. And I said, he's doing it the right way. He's doing it the right way.
He was. And we won that case.
You won that case. And it was a really really hard fought case. And I want to say the guy who was the partner at the time, maybe he's still alive, I should give him a call, was his last name was Brown, B-R-O-W-N.
Alan Brown, I think.
Do you remember him?
I think Alan Brown.
Alan Brown. And Alan was like their trade secret guru.
Yes.
But somehow he ended up being in charge of this case, which had nothing to do with trade secrets.
That's right.
It was actually an important First Amendment case in some ways.
Sort of. It was a private attorney general case.
Right. And you and your brother did an excellent job, and we should almost do a separate podcast, but let's do this one. So welcome into the Valley Current. And I have great respect for you. I mean, you have no idea. Whenever a fiduciary duty question comes up, I immediately say, pull out Professor Chodos' treatise. We've got two of them. I've got one at home. So there's one here.
Okay.
And we're going to find the answer. And if we don't find the answer, I'm going to go online to your system, which sometimes has updates, not yet in the book, and we'll find the answer. It is the most comprehensive treatise that I'm aware of.
I update it just about not every month, every 2 months, I would say. I add cases and text. Yeah.
It is an amazing body of law. And I have to tell you, I cut my teeth very early, and even at Irvin, Cohen, and Jessup, because there were fiduciary duty breaches alleged by the plaintiff, your side, against the founder of the church,
right,
on the view that he was looting the church.
Right.
And it was a big issue.
Right.
I mean, I don't know where all those guys landed. I know at different times your brother thought half of them should go to jail. I mean,
they didn't end up in jail, but the church sort of went down.
Right. Yeah. But he had a lot of followers, and they paid a lot of money.
Yep.
And they were used to paying 10% of their salary like that. Bang, bang, bang.
That's what it says in the Bible.
Right. That's what it says. And your treatise does have good quotes from the Bible.
Yes,
as well
it does.
The Talmud, right?
Yes.
Am I right about that?
It does.
So you're looking very young. What are you doing to stay so young these days? And then I'll get to some other questions.
I'm not that old.
I know you're not that old. Excuse me. We're not that old. That's right.
Hey,
your brother was older. Your brother was older than you.
He was 9 years older than me.
And where is he now?
Oh, he died. He
I didn't know that.
In 2015, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And what happened to the firm? Because he was kind of the lead guy in the firm, right?
He was the only guy in the firm.
Okay.
There was no firm. It was just him.
No, but wasn't there Chodos, blah, 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 blah at some point?
Not Hillel. There's David Chodos and somebody else. but Hillel never had a firm.
So he liked to just be his own guy.
But he had people helping him, like me,
you,
his son, and
like
his
you.
daughter. Yeah,
right, absolutely. I never thought that he could write that well. Certainly not as well as you write. But I thought, man, on his feet, you could not beat him.
He was very good.
He was unbelievable on his feet.
Yes, it's true.
And I have to say, it's really amazing to kind of go back. So he was 9 years older. How old was he when he died?
He was 2015, 73, 81.
81. So he lived above the averages.
He did. He was very, very overweight and in bad health.
I mean, I used to see him. I think we went out to lunch with him once. I forget. We were negotiating something. He said, I'll take you guys out to lunch. And man, I watched him have lunch, and it was kind of a spectacle in and of itself. It was pretty funny. And I know at the time, I think Brown said, no. And I think I said to him, no, let's go to lunch. We're going to learn something. Let's sit down. And, he was a very open guy. He would tell you what he thought. I mean, no holds barred, man. Yeah. Really interesting guy. Really interesting guy. So tell us about your journey, because you ran a computer company for a while. Tell us about that journey. I have a memory of this.
Well, I have had a very oddball journey. My father was a rabbi.
Right.
And I wanted to be a rabbi when I was growing up.
Right.
So I earned my way through college teaching Hebrew, and I sort of expanded into Greek and Latin.
Wow.
And I was a cantor in fact, one of my early jobs as a cantor and teacher was in Silicon Valley, in Palo Alto, when I was going to Berkeley.
Because you were a student at Berkeley, is that right?
Yes, I graduated from Berkeley in philosophy.
Right.
And then I went up to Oregon, where I enrolled in MA programs in classics and philosophy. And I started working at the Oregon Research Institute. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes,
but it was a kind of psychology research institute. And in those days, they had computer connections. They used to send computer data by overnight wideband from Portland, Oregon, down to UCLA, and then get the messages back. Right. And they analyzed all that. And I wrote a paper. I was into artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I wrote a lot of articles and research proposals about computers and language and artificial intelligence.
Right.
And then I went to work at Janssen in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
And then I went to Montreal, Quebec. And I worked as an assistant to a philosophy professor, editing a volume.
Okay.
And I taught Hebrew. And then I decided I wanted to be a lawyer.
So your brother was also a lawyer by then, right? Wasn't he?
Yes, he was a lawyer by then. He had started out as an insurance salesman, but he went in his 20s, he became a lawyer.
Right.
And he had been a lawyer for many years when I became a lawyer.
I want to say he went to USC, but maybe I'm not remembering.
No, he went to UCLA.
He went to UCLA because I graduated from UCLA. I knew he went to school in Los Angeles.
So he went to that school.
Right.
And he opened his law office, and he was a practicing lawyer for 40 years or whatever it was.
Right.
50
years. A lot of lawyers don't last 40 years. I'm one of the few, and you are as well, I think.
I am.
Right.
I've been more than 40 years, but I'm getting irritated with it, to be honest with you. And I'm looking for alternative ways of approaching it. And by the way, this pandemic has triggered a lot of thinking. I don't know about you.
People realize life is short, right?
It's not just that life is short, but I don't think it's coming back to what it was beforehand. I think it's going to be something new, and I'm thinking about what it ought to be, what it can be, and I'm working towards it in my mind.
But I want to share my screen for a second, because what I put up is you were one of the early people. I'm going to put this on the screen just to show people that you did a website very early.
Yes.
And it's your own handiwork, and I think it's great. It's exactly what I would do if I were doing my own website as opposed to contracting it out to a bunch of people.
Yes.
Which is you've got your name, and then you've got the various roles that you do.
Yes.
Like lawyer, author, lecturer, teacher, da-da-da-da-da. You're also an expert witness, and I've used you as an expert witness, and you're an unbelievably great expert witness because you get the story right away. Like, that's a real positive plus, that you get the story. A lot of people don't. A lot of people take a long time. So you probably want to add something here that says expert witness, because each of these buttons include that, right?
You're right, in a way. Yeah, I think about that. I'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, and you actually have what I would say even more than the website, and I'll put it up next, but we'll stop this here because you'll tell me more about it. You put your entire treatise online early using an IBM piece of IBM software that a lot of people don't realize it was kind of the precursor, arguably, to Facebook. I hate to say it that way because
I don't know about Facebook, but yes, that folio views. I published the treatise in paper and folio views simultaneously.
Right, and that software is a very big organizing tool for you.
But then when I actually decided to stop publishing the hardcover and to publish an ebook version, I made my own software. I had a consultant and we developed our own software for ebooks.
Okay.
And the ebook that's up at fiduciaryduties.net now is far advanced over these other things. It's advanced over PDFs, but it didn't catch, except many people who have my book like it. But it's very, very advanced software. So I made a whole library of that kind of software.
Right, and it does, in a way, provide a much more searchable access to the book. I'm going to put that up next because I've got the screen pulled up. Fiduciaryduties.net, Laws, Society's Quest for Integrity. That's the hardbound book, but you update it and you provide authentication for people to actually have bookmarks and the like.
Absolutely.
Into the database. You might say the book itself is like a big database.
It is a Lotus Notes database. That's what it is.
Right.
And I've been updating it, like I say, every month, maybe every other month sometimes. If I print a second edition in hardcover, it will be 2,000 pages instead of 1,700 pages.
Right. And you also use the little flow charting tool to show people how the book is organized, which I think is a really smart approach.
This is called the brain.
Yes.
And that's the software. And you can click on any one of the nodes. It goes to the center and shows you all the connections.
So when you do stuff like this, are you constantly reading advance sheets to pay attention to what's going on and how does it break down and where does it go? Because this is a good organizing tool for people in law school. This is how you actually synthesize all the cases you read out of the case book for a particular area, like constitutional law and so on.
I read the daily journal and all the case summaries every single day.
Yes.
And when I find anything I think is relevant to the book, I add it. That's what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it looks like you add to your brain over time and then that eventually automatically gets published as well.
The brain itself doesn't need to be updated because it's more like the table of contents.
Okay.
I did add a few sections to the book since I first published it, but I don't think I had to change the brain because, as you see, this is kind of a high-level table of contents.
Yes. Yes.
It's the book itself. If you were to log in with your user ID and password, you'd see additional cases for every year.
Right.
2017, 2018, 2019, and so on.
And I think for most people, just having that visualization, of course, you actually recall and have a grasp of all 5,000 cases that are summarized.
Many, not all.
No, I mean, I think you have an amazing reach, and it's a little bit like Mel Nimmer, whose son I'm going to be talking to tomorrow. I was the first year clerk to Mel Nimmer when he was working on his First Amendment treatise, and he was just an exceptional guy that had that same sort of, I know everything about copyright and I have to tell you a lot of it is inconsistent. And I think you do the same thing in fiduciary duty law.
I admired his book and I studied it,
Yes. And Mel was one of those guys that you thought, man, he deserves, back then, I think he was getting, in the 70s, he was getting $500 an hour. I think that would be like $10,000 an hour today for his time. Right. Because the view of the studios was, hey, if you're going to have a copyright case in front of the Supreme Court, Mel Nimmer's got to both brief it and argue it. Because their view was he's the guy that's got to write the brief. Of course, he got some of us, his students, to help, but he did the final work product.
When did he pass away?
So I want to say it was more than 15 years ago.
I think so.
Yeah, maybe even 20.
And so his son must be in his 50s by now?
Yeah, his son's in his 60s.
60s.
The son's in his 60s, and he's at Irella Manila, and he's part-time UCLA doing the very same courses that his father did. The copyright course, the intellectual property course. Now he does a social media course. So I'll send you the link to his podcast because it's going to follow tomorrow. So you're a good sort of 1-2 punch for this week because hey, if you're sheltered at home and you've got nothing else to do with your time.
Well, I'm impressed that you're doing so many and so often. Are you sure how long will you sustain that?
Well, that's a good question because I've got a little team of people that help me, not with the technology, but more with making sure that if there's any sort of bleeps that we need to bleep out, occasionally someone will curse and they'll say Apple actually will get upset. So for example, we don't play music on this podcast, but if we did play music, the Apple AI tool would say, we can't publish that podcast because you're repeating music for which there's a copyright. We don't want to be held as a vicarious infringer or as an aider and abetter. So you've got to be careful what you do because I've played around with people and say, hey, let's play this, let's play that. And you say, well, you got to shut down the damn podcast.
I understand. I understand.
So
I heard on one of your podcasts, your wife is a doctor. I've never.
Yeah, she got her PhD at Stanford. And she does a lot of really interesting stuff that's about the flows of water and water quality. And now she's getting into technology about how will the blockchain protect the integrity of the data coming out of the water quality so we don't have a repeat of what's going on in Michigan, right? There's still problems with the water in Flint, Michigan. And there's problems with the data because the data is being selectively corrupted.
Does your wife have a website?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I don't remember the name of it, but she does have one. I'll send it to you.
What kind of husband are you?
I know. We'll bleep this part out. Maybe not. She appreciates that I've got a lot of balls in the air, but in general, she's doing some really excellent work. Some of it paid, some of it pro bono. And a lot of it is designed to say the future has to protect the integrity of the information. In many ways, people don't understand that the blockchain really represents a certain degree of integrity that, politicians can't pass a magic wand saying, strike that, strike that out of the record. We don't want people to see that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so tell me more about your journey. So did you go to law school in Los Angeles too, or where did you go?
I went to Portland, Oregon, and then I went with my girlfriend to Alaska for a summer.
Okay.
And I was a fisherman. And I had
a place to go fishing. That is the place to go fishing, man.
No, not that kind of fishing. Halibut fishing in the ocean.
Oh, the big time fishing. Okay.
Yeah, we had guns on board because pirates were always a danger.
Wow.
In the ocean.
Wow.
And I was on the crew on the ship, learned how to jump into the water and get the net and all that kind of stuff. Then I worked in construction in Anchorage, Alaska.
Wow.
And then I moved to, what was the name of the company? It was a big company on the East Coast, a data company, but I worked as a programmer.
Okay.
But in 1964, right before all this, I worked for IBM.
Right.
I was an early Silicon Valley guy before there was a Silicon Valley.
Right.
But I was in computers, and I then opened my office when I had my company that did telecommunications, artificial intelligence.
Early. This is 1960s.
Yes.
Mainframe days.
Mainframe, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to go to the computer center in Harvard at night. We lived across the river, and I would walk across the bridge. I'd tell my wife I'll be back at 7 a.m, and the computer room was a huge floor.
Right, and you had access to the slow period when the machine was not being used as much.
And I had to come with my punched cards.
Yes, of course.
And
exactly.
we did all that,
mm-hmm.
and we developed a system that would allow our customers to enter all their traffic, telephone volume traffic from city to city.
Right.
And my partners, one of them was a professor at MIT, a sort of a genius type of guy, who worked out an algorithm. And we were able to send them back a message that said, put this switch here, that switch there, realign your large trunks and your soft trunks. And if we don't save you $100,000 a month, you don't have to pay us.
Wow.
But we used to save over $1 million a month.
So you were at the beginning of value-based consulting. That today is called value-based consulting. You don't pay us unless we deliver value.
We did that. and also artificial intelligence, because the ability to take a look at this huge matrix of flows, traffic flows, and make sense of it. So we did that, and I had my company, I ended up owning it. I wrote the software. I wrote 20,000 lines of Fortran code.
Okay.
And it was a very successful thing, and we sold the system to about 40 of the Fortune 50.
Okay.
But my problem in life, because my father was a rabbi, I was never interested in money. So it made a profit, but only a small one. But ultimately, a time-sharing company on Route 128 bought us.
Okay.
And with the money I got from that, I went back to law school.
So it probably was easy. Law school was probably easy because you had done all these logic flow diagrams and you understood how to break things up and recompose them.
Not only that, and in fact, I wrote essays about how we ought to have computer science as part of the curriculum, which was then a new idea.
You're way ahead of your time.
And I wrote a lot of contracts for the company. So I was very comfortable with contracts, and I enjoyed law school. I went through law school.
Mm-hmm.
And after I finished, my wife and I discussed it. We decided to move to LA.
Okay.
And I sort of apprenticed myself to Hillel for a few years.
Okay.
But I had an office in Beverly Hills, and I started my own office in Santa Monica.
Okay.
But all through, I've continued to be interested in computers. I've had that computer version of the book.
Yes.
But the rest of my story is I did a lot of things besides that. I've written a book on art, my wife's art. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Well, is that called Giotto's Grotto, or
Giotto Multimedia, Giotto's Press, and so on.
Yes, I've seen it. Yes.
The black cover book, Why on Earth Does God Have to Paint?
Yes.
And it's a serious art book.
Yes.
My first book was called The Jewish Attitude Towards Justice and Law.
Okay.
Where I advanced a couple of revolutionary ideas. One was that the whole story of the Exodus, as told in the in the 5 books of Moses, is a propagandistic lie. There never was slavery in Egypt, and I believe that to be historically true. I believe the Egyptians were a cosmopolitan and very welcoming society in those days. And the language in the book of Exodus itself suggests that when the Jews wanted to leave, they gave them gold and silver and all kinds of presents. So, and then the rest of the story is that Moses, bless his heart, what's going on?
I put your book up, The Jewish Attitude Towards Justice and Law. You've gotten 5 stars for it, and it's on Amazon at $24.
Correct.
There it is.
Correct. That's the book.
There it is.
So that was the first book I wrote. And then the most recent book I wrote is called Grieving the Loss of Religion.
Okay.
Which is about the decline of the so-called sacred text religions.
Is this yours too, called The Speaking Wedding Ring?
Oh, that's a story, a fable I made up, a story.
Okay.
I have many stories on Kindle.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
Many of them with Jewish themes.
So you've been prolific, is what it looks like, as an author.
Fairly prolific, and I'm writing another. But right now, by the way, I don't know if are you on my mailing list? You are. I just sent you Law's Integrity.
Yes.
I just sent you that.
Okay.
And I'm writing another essay because I've been focused since January. I'm sure you were following the impeachment trial.
Yes, of course.
There was a lot to make lawyers interested in that, but one of the most interesting things was Mitch McConnell saying, I'm not neutral, and this is not a judicial proceeding, it's a purely political one.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to ask myself, what is the difference? What is really the difference?
Yes.
Is every jury trial a political process?
Yes.
And if not, what's the difference?
Yes.
And I will be giving you my answer this month later.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to it. But it's really interesting. You're kind of a Renaissance man in many ways. I mean, when you talk about those ranges of things you've done, I don't think your brother was that way, was he?
No.
He was kind of like law school, lawyer, advocate, bing, 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 right?
Very much.
And he made a lot of money. I think he made a ton of money, didn't he?
He made, well, let's say, he made in the millions, but not tens of millions.
Okay.
And he wasn't very prudent about business or investment. He had a boat. He had a house in Beverly Hills.
Well, back in those days, Melvin Belli had a yacht, and a big deal was to have a yacht. If you were a big-time lawyer, you had to have a big-time yacht.
That's what Hillel did. And I, my family was never interested in business. My father was a rabbi. He didn't really think about business. Hillel didn't really think about it, but he wanted to look rich. He wanted to feel like he was rich. But he was a wonderful lawyer.
Yes.
And I learned a lot from him.
So are you now just doing the writing? You also do teaching, and you also do mediation and arbitration, right?
Well, this is interesting, Jack. I had the idea for RentAJudge, the website.
Yeah, a while ago, right?
10 years ago. And I thought it was a great idea, and I got reviewed in various newspapers, but the traffic volume was very small, almost zero. So I let it lie. Just last week, a lawyer wrote me and asked me about how it works and how much it costs and so on. He said he's a divorce lawyer, a family lawyer. And he said, during the current situation, we need alternatives to the courts. And
right.
I want to know if RentAJudge can be an alternative.
Right.
And I told him it is definitely an alternative. And in fact, I have a great deal of belief in it even today.
Yes.
Because more today than before, because there are various advantages to it. It's a one-day trial.
I put it up on the screen because you have a site called RentAJudge.com.
Correct.
And it shows sort of how it works. You were pretty early in this, saying you could actually be more of like a true neutral, in the sense that you're not just trying to get people to a settlement. You're actually adjudicating on a record that you're creating, whether in person or by phone.
Exactly.
Or even on documents only, right?
The difference between this and mediation is the mediator tries to persuade the clients of something.
Right.
Whereas in my system, they try to persuade the hearing officer, the judge.
Right.
And it's like a dress rehearsal for a trial.
Yes.
So I used to do, when I had big cases, I did one-day trials. I rented a hotel suite, a conference room. I had the hotel bring us lunch and coffee and donuts.
Right.
And we would start at 9 a.m. and finish at 5 p.m.
Right.
And I would have a group of 5 to 10 people serve as jurors. And I would serve as the enemy lawyer, and one of my friends would serve as the for us lawyer.
Right.
And we lawyers could also act as witnesses just to save time and not bring people. It was the best. It remains the best system of trial preparation. The best.
Right. It's like doing a mock trial or a dress rehearsal, and you learn a lot about what people don't think is that important. You'd be amazed at what lawyers sweat about. And then you find out the jurors don't care about it. They don't care about something that you as the lawyer think, oh, that person's hairstyle is going to turn off every juror, and they just don't care. You'd be amazed.
You're completely right. And also, it's important to remember, I'm a business litigation guy mainly. That's what I've done for 40 years.
Right.
And I would say 98% of my cases, there are no really disputed facts. Very few, if any.
Right.
And often unimportant. What's really disputed is how the law should approach the agreed facts. And RentAJudge is perfect. We allow 25 pages of brief overall, and any number of exhibits.
Right.
And a fixed time period for either oral argument or a fixed date for submitting written briefs. And then 5 days later, an opinion comes out. And it's all for fixed price.
And it's instructive to people to get that neutral opinion, because sometimes it can really bridge differences where people say, look, this is a neutral guy. He's got as much, if not more, experience in this area than most judges have.
You've got it, Jack. And I'll tell you, I asked myself, what is the measure of success for a RentAJudge hearing? And I came up with a surprising answer. Everybody's satisfied with the opinion, even the loser.
Yeah.
That's the success.
Right. Right. And when you think about it, we probably need to get to the point where before people even file a case, they think about, let's go in front of a real neutral, tell each side of our story. I mean, I had these two guys, I think I might have mentioned this to you, because I was trying to get them to just go in front of you or someone like you. I remember. Yes. I was putting you at the top of the list because these guys were, they used to go to the temple together. They used to be friends. They danced together. There's such a great story there. And I said, look, I'm an Italian guy. Maybe I don't get it. I'm not going to try to mediate this between you, but why don't you go? And your name was at the top of the list. And they said, why? I said, because he understands you culturally. He'll get the case in a minute, factually. and he'll give you a legal opinion, and he knows the law in this area, and it was a fiduciary breach.
I remember.
And a 50-50 case. I'll leave the names out to protect the innocent. But they were like, no, we want to have our trial. It's like, okay, you're going to spend, whatever you're going to spend. It was a small fortune. I'm sure when you look back on it, they would have been better off spending a day with you.
Probably. I'm a big believer. Mediation can be good or bad.
Yes.
There are problems with mediation. One problem is it's unpredictably expensive.
It can be.
It can be. Not when you go to you. I see you do mediation.
Yes.
But if you go to JAMS or ADR,
right.
There are two levels of greed operating when you go through the process. So
it's become a real profit-making enterprise for those businesses.
I know.
I mean, they try to do the right thing, but the reality is they're on the clock. And the part that really gets to me, and you'll appreciate it, is let's say you go and you pick a good retired judge. Maybe it's a retired federal judge. Maybe there's even some California Supreme Court justices that are retired now. And you think you're going to get them. And then they tell you within the first hour of discussion, I have a law clerk that works for me now. What? Wait a minute. I mean, I hate to be disrespectful, but I think people are paying for you, and they're not paying for, hey, this law clerk is going to scan through and summarize stuff for me. Forget it. You're getting like a second-year associate, or maybe even worse than that.
Correct. It's worse than the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's not it's not the way it should go. I mean, look, I've been listening to the Supreme Court arguments daily. I get up at 6 a.m. They're on the radio now on C-SPAN. I'll send you the link.
Oh, yeah.
They did the big case involving Trump's tax return.
I read about the news, but I didn't hear the argument.
You could hear the argument. I have to tell you, there's 3 categories of argument at the appellate side. The extremely good, like what Rafael Chodos, your brother, would do, and other really great advocates do. They're really bad. Even in the Supreme Court, they're really bad. And then what I would call kind of like the pedestrian, mediocre. And I have to tell you that, unfortunately, the really good are a very tiny number. The good news, the really bad are a really tiny number. And then there's a range in the middle. And I'm super critical, because when I see an advocate say, well, Your Honor, I guess I'm not that clear, or even getting kind of snotty with them, I think to myself, man, these people don't realize that justices are human too.
Yes.
And it matters. And a lot of them are getting older, so they really can't even get a question out very well. I mean, they're very, very organized, so they come to the hearing in a very organized way. But, they're getting older, and some of them don't know how to use the mute and the unmute button, so there's some time lags. They're in the 21st century here. This is really new to them.
Well, I got to say to you, I've attended a few meetings by Zoom conference.
Yes.
I don't enjoy them usually, unless there's a certain kind of meeting and a certain kind of objective.
Yes.
I'm enjoying talking to you, but my little brother still runs Sabbath services by Zoom.
Okay.
And I don't like it. He had a Tell Us Seder, and I didn't like that.
Okay.
And I don't think I like court hearings by Zoom.
Well, they're tough. I think it's very tough. And I think the Supreme Court right now, the U.S. Supreme Court, they're not following the Ninth Circuit or the Fifth Circuit. The circuits are actually heading to video, simulcast video onto YouTube directly in real time. So you get to see all the, blowing their nose and, fixing their hair. And you look at them and say, man, they're human. And I've had a few clients say, those are just human beings. I show them some of those videos, and they say, those guys are going to make a decision that may mean $1 billion for me one way or the other. I don't have a lot of confidence anymore.
That's right.
They were like, they liked it better when it was a black box. They said, what did you think they were? Gods? They're not gods. They're human.
It's interesting when you think about the legal profession and its history.
Yes.
Ancient Egypt, the case of the eloquent peasant. Do you know that story?
No. Tell it. It sounds great.
1800 BC. The peasant is walking along the road, and the pharaoh's lieutenant, the peasant is carrying donkeys, pushing donkeys, and the evil lieutenant of the pharaoh wants to steal the donkeys. So he puts his handkerchief in the middle of the road, and the peasant has to either go right onto the guy's property or left into the river. And the peasant says, please remove the handkerchief, but the guy refuses. And finally, he arrests the guy, takes his donkeys, puts him in jail. And the peasant starts making his argument. And the point of the story from the ancient Egyptian, Middle Kingdom, point of the story is this peasant is extremely eloquent. He's so eloquent that the supervisor of this guy who took the donkeys hears the argument and rushes to the Pharaoh and says, you've got to hear this peasant. So he brings the peasant to the Pharaoh's palace, and the peasant repeats his arguments. And the long and the short of the story is the Pharaoh is so impressed with him, he gives back all the donkeys, and he makes that other lieutenant a poor guy for the rest of his life. So no profession of lawyer. Profession of lawyer is 2,000 years later.
Yes.
And Greece had no profession of lawyer in the early days. You could be an advocate. That means you could stand up and speak for your friend.
Right.
But you didn't have a professional degree or qualification. It was only in Rome that certification began.
Yes.
And of course, it became much more prominent later in the Middle Ages.
And the thing that's happening to some degree is the art of advocacy is being lost because there aren't that many cases that go to trial. I mean, more of my cases go to trial because we're willing to be out there and aggressive and take
No, because you're stubborn, Jack. Just admit it. You're just a stubborn.
I appreciate that. But a lot of people are like, we settle cases. That's what we do. Even these big class action firms, I often say, when's the last time you tried a case? They're like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Right.
You're getting billions of dollars from this class action case. They're like, yeah, so what's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with settlement if it's done consciously.
Yes, absolutely. So we just got a couple of minutes. Why don't you tell people how they reach you at RentAJudge? Obviously, they can go to the website, but they can email you directly as well.
They can email either me, my name, Rafael, Rafael, at Chodos.com,
right,
or support@rentajudge.com.
Okay.
You said you had a problem with email bouncing, but I tested it.
Okay, it works. It works now.
It works.
I probably had the wrong email, but your phone number, if they want to reach you, because you always pick up the phone. You're very good about that.
Only when I see Russo on the keypad.
I appreciate that.
The telephone is a 20th century device, Jack. You mustn't forget this. The problem with the telephone is you call me when you want to talk to me without thinking about whether I want to talk to you.
Exactly.
So I don't accept, most of my calls I don't accept unless I happen to see. Send me an email, make a phone date, and it'll all be done.
That's the way to do it. So we'll do part 2 to this. We're going to stop here. We'll do part 2 at some point more about fiduciary duty law and where it's going,
Absolutely.
how it's getting there. I mean, all sorts of stuff is playing out in the practice of law, as you know, and all sorts of stuff will play out in the AI area, which we'll do another set on. But thank you for your time this afternoon. You've been a great guest, and I've just enjoyed having you.
It's been a pleasure to see you and talk to you.
Give my regards to your wife and tell her I appreciate the art, and I appreciate how you have put a book together for her that really works. You're exceptional.
Right. And send me your wife's website.
I will do that. Okay. See you, Rafael. Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm leaving. Bye.
Bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.